El usuario me ha proporcionado una historia extensa, en español, y ha solicitado que la adapte y traduzca al inglés, cambiando los nombres de los personajes, lugares y referencias culturales para que encajen en un contexto de Estados Unidos, y Yuyu. Aquí está la adaptación y traducción al inglés de la historia. Hashtag the lottery betrayal. A story of vengeance and rebirth. My husband told me, I won't support a fat cripple like you. But he didn't know I'd just won $23 million in the lottery. And he was paralyzed when. Before we begin, tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. I'd love to know how far this story has reached. Now, get ready for something you won't be able to stop watching. They say the love of your life can become your worst punishment. And it took Talia 10 years of marriage and a broken body to discover it. She was 38 years old. A nurse at heart, one of those who poured her soul into every shift. She was always strong, even when life chipped away at what she loved most. Her body wasn't the same after so many hormonal, emotional, and work battles. But her soul was still there, on the edge of the abyss, yet standing, until that accident changed everything. White lights cold, unbearably cold. That sterile silence that smells of chemicals, uncertainty, and contained death. Talia could barely open her eyes. Her face was covered in bruises, her lips were cracked, and a tube helped her breathe. She couldn't feel her left leg or her right arm. Only her chest ached, as if her heart wanted to escape. The door opened, and he walked in, Robert, her husband, the man with whom she shared a decade of dreams. The same man who once held her in the early hours when they lost their first pregnancy. The one who promised to care for her in sickness and in health. That Robert no longer existed. He didn't come in with flowers, no tears, not even concern. He walked in with a frown, his cell phone in hand, and an expression of such visible disgust that the nurse in the room turned away awkwardly. Robert didn't even say hello. He stood in front of the bed. He took a deep breath, as if the situation bored him. Then, he let out the sentence that marked the beginning of the end. I'm not going to support a fat cripple like you. I didn't marry you to be your babysitter. You're useless even in bed. The nurse, a woman in her 50s, dropped a folder. The dry thud of the plastic on the floor was the only sound for several seconds. Talia couldn't speak. The oxygen barely kept her conscious, but she heard every word. She tried to articulate something, a why, a what's wrong with you, an I love you, anything, whatever it was. But from her lips came only a whimper and hot tears that rolled down her swollen face. Robert leaned closer and lowered his voice as if he only wanted her to hear it. You know what the doctors told me? That you won't walk properly again, no rehab, no miracles. You're a nuisance, Talia, and I don't plan on dragging you around for the rest of my life. I've had enough. She tried to reply. Barely a whisper. Robert, I'm alive. I'm barely alive. He crouched down a bit, smiled scornfully, and said, Well, I wish you weren't. The nurse couldn't take it anymore. She approached him, trembling. Sir, this is not the time or place. Your wife is in critical condition. Robert turned around without even looking at her. She's not my wife anymore. She's a problem with feet, or without them, rather. And he walked out without looking back, without a tear, without guilt. The door slam was so loud that Talia shook in the bed. The nurse approached, gently wiped her tears, touched her forehead, and said, You don't deserve this, honey. Nobody does. But Talia wasn't listening anymore. Her mind had wandered far away, to the times she defended him against her mother, to the nights she waited for him with dinner ready, to the years she worked double shifts to help him with his startup. All for what? Robert took the elevator down, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Outside, in the waiting room, Brittany, a 25-year-old, healthy lifestyle model, waited for him with an artificial smile and plump lips. Is she dead yet? She asked, checking her phone. Robert chuckled. No, but it won't be long. And if not, I'll take care of it. They both left the hospital arm in arm. A black car and 2 journalists waited for them outside. The entrepreneur Robert Montgomery was the guest of honor at a charity gala. Ironies of life. Mr. Montgomery, how does it feel to have donated over $100,000 to the Foundation for Children with Disabilities? Robert smiled for the camera. Firm, confident. I always say everyone deserves a second chance, especially the weakest. Brittany gave him a look of false pride. The camera focused on them as they got into the car, as if they were the perfect couple. And in room 305, amidst tubes, pain, and disillusionment, Talia awoke from a faint. She opened her eyes with difficulty, and the first thing she saw was the screen of her cell phone, which the nurse had left charging on the nightstand. An alert message appeared on the screen. Congratulations. Your ticket number 54,829 is the winner of the $23 million American Major Prize. At first, she thought she was hallucinating. She brought her trembling hand closer, read it again, and looked once more. It wasn't a fake message. It wasn't a joke. She remembered that ticket. She bought it at the pharmacy a week before the accident on an impulse. She hadn't even checked the number. Tears started falling again, but now they weren't tears of pain. Or perhaps they were, but a different deep pain, as if the universe had whispered, "You are worth much more than they led you to believe." She gripped the phone in her fingers. She felt a strength surge from deep within her chest. A strength she hadn't felt in months, years maybe. She didn't say a word, but her soul was screaming, and something inside her changed forever. The nurse came back in and noticed Talia's face. That expression wasn't fear, it was something else. Silent with an edge, pain transforming into something new, something dangerous, a contained fire. "Are you all right, sweetie?" Talia nodded without taking her eyes off the screen. Her hand was still shaking, but her eyes no longer pleaded. Now they observed like someone beginning to plan their next move. That night, Robert appeared on the news, receiving an award for his social commitment to women in vulnerable situations. Talia watched him from her bed with her face still swollen and her bones broken. But now there was something in her gaze that shone differently. A new nurse came in to change her for. "Isn't that your husband?" she asked innocently, seeing the television. Talia took a few seconds to respond. "No, that man is nothing to me anymore." And she turned off the television. Outside, the rain began to beat hard against the hospital windows, as if the sky also wanted to purge itself of so much cynicism. Tonight, while the city slept and Robert celebrated his success, a woman broken inside began to rise, but nobody, not Robert, not Brittany, not the whole world, had any idea of the emotional earthquake that had just awakened. And there's one thing you should never underestimate: a betrayed woman, wounded, and with $23 million in her pocket. ## Part 2, The Reckoning. Talia didn't sleep that night. The physical pain was unbearable, yes, but what burned her most was her soul. She had fallen into life's trap, giving everything for someone who not only didn't deserve it, but destroyed her the moment he felt powerful enough to do so. While the hospital monitors beeped around her, she mentally reconstructed every piece of her history, trying to understand where it all went wrong. Her mind took her back years. The 28-year-old Talia still lived in a small nurse's apartment near the university hospital. She was full of dreams, full of energy, with double shifts that seemed not to weigh her down. That's where she met Robert. Back then, he was a struggling student with more ideas than discipline and a charismatic smile that hid insecurity. He sold custom t-shirts online, dreaming of having his own brand someday. Talia fell in love with his passion, his hunger for the future. As he used to say, she never saw him as a broken man. She saw him as someone who just needed an opportunity, and she gave it to him. A year into the relationship, Robert was living with her. He never contributed much financially, but Talia compensated for everything. She covered the rent, the food, the utilities. When he didn't get sales, she encouraged him, made him coffee, built him website pages, and took photos of his products. Once, she sold the gold necklace her grandmother had given her when she graduated as a nurse, just to pay for a marketing campaign for Robert. "I just ask that when your company grows, you never leave me wanting," she told him one night as they ate buttered noodles because they couldn't afford more. Robert smiled tenderly. He took her hand and said, "With you, Talia, always. You are my rock." Those words were etched in her memory. Though, over the years, she learned that the tenderness wasn't love, it was dependence. Robert never loved her. He needed her, and then when he no longer needed her, he discarded her. Soon after, they began living with Eleanor, Robert's mother. It was temporary, according to him, until the company took off, but the cohabitation became a torment for Talia. Eleanor was controlling, critical, and had a sharp tongue. "A woman who earns more than her husband is not a real woman," she would often say while stirring her coffee. "Ma'am, I just want to help," Talia would reply patiently. Helping is humiliating. Just because he doesn't say it doesn't mean he doesn't feel it. Robert never defended her. He just smiled uncomfortably and looked at his phone. Later, when the company began to yield profits, Eleanor was even crueler. She called Talia a fat workhorse, a kind of joke between her and Robert. At first, he laughed nervously. Then he started saying it openly. After the second failed attempt at pregnancy, Talia underwent a hormonal treatment that caused her to gain weight. Nothing alarming, but everything changed at home. Robert stopped touching her. They slept in the same bed, but he would turn away, pretending to be asleep. He showered with the door closed, and when she cried, he would say, "It's not about you, it's the stress." But it was about her, and they both knew it. One night, she overheard him talking on the phone with a friend. "She disgusts me. She looks like a different person. I don't know what happened to the woman who was sexy and fun. Now she just wants to talk about babies and work." Talia, hidden behind the bathroom door, covered her mouth to keep from crying out loud. That was the first time she felt something inside her truly break. She sat on the cold floor, hugging her knees in silence. She knew the love was dying, but she refused to accept it. In the hospital, as dawn began to peek through the window, Talia opened her eyes. The monitor beeped regularly. She took a deep breath. The pain was still there, but there was something stronger. A fierce need not to be the same person again. On the nightstand was a thermos of hot water that the nurse had left her. Next to it, the phone with the screen off. She turned it on again. She rechecked the ticket number. 54-829. The same one she had in her wallet, now stored in a hospital drawer. She knew she couldn't move much yet, but the money was there, and money was power. That same day, she asked to see the hospital administrator. The nurse hesitated but agreed. When the man in the suit and tie arrived, Talia looked him straight in the eye. "I need you to get me a lawyer, a good one, trustworthy, who knows how to handle money." Discreetly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry?" he asked, confused. "I'm not crazy," she said firmly. "I just won the lottery, and I don't intend to make the mistake of letting anyone know. Only you and the lawyer." The man was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "All right, I'll get you one, but everything you say will stay between us. And thank you," she continued, "because if anyone else finds out, especially my husband, that money disappears." Talia's look left no room for doubt. The administrator left. Talia closed her eyes. The machine beeped a little faster. It wasn't fear, it was determination. Her mind went back to the past. To the night Robert came home euphoric with the papers for his first major contract. "I sold the entire line. They advanced me $30,000. Talia hugged him, cried with joy. She prepared a special dinner, and that same night, they made love as they hadn't in months. It was the last time she felt he truly desired her. The next day, Robert opened a bank account without her. He told her it was for tax reasons, that he would add her as a joint holder later. He never did. Months passed. Robert started dressing differently. He went to the gym. He bought a brand-name watch. He started coming home later. Talia convinced herself it was due to work until she found a lipstick stain on his shirt, and he told her it was from a business partner. She greeted me with a kiss and accidentally smudged me. Talia wanted to believe him. It was around those days that they met Brittany. Back then, she wasn't an influencer. She was a marketing assistant. She smiled too much, always overly friendly. Talia noticed it. Robert looked at her differently, but she said nothing. In the hospital, as she reviewed all this, the door opened. It was the older nurse, the one with the kind eyes. "Your lawyer will be here tomorrow. Are you sure about what you're doing?" "I'm sure that no one else is going to decide my life for me." The nurse smiled sadly. She stroked her hand. "Your husband came today. Did he come in?" "No, he just asked if you were still alive. He left with a blonde in a black car." Talia didn't say anything, just turned her head and took a deep breath. That night, she had a strange dream. She saw herself running through a field without a cane, without pain, and Robert shouting in the background. But she couldn't hear him. She just ran far away, free. Upon waking, she asked for a notebook and a pen. She began to write a list. At the top, she wrote in all caps, "Everything I let them take from me," and beneath it, she began to enumerate. "My self-esteem, my mental health, my freedom, my money, my dreams, my dignity." When she reached line 10, she wrote, "My body." She cried in silence. Then she wrote a second list. "Everything I am going to reclaim." She didn't know how yet, but she knew she would. Not for revenge, but for justice. The next day, the lawyer arrived. A man in his 60s, a serene face, a calm voice. "Ms. Delgado, it's a pleasure. Your story has moved me, and I want to help you protect your assets." Before talking about money, she said, "I want to talk about a betrayal. Or several." And for an hour, she told him everything. Robert, the money, the humiliation, the abandonment, the contempt, everything. The lawyer listened without interrupting. Then he said, "We'll set up a blind trust. You won't appear on any property titles, but you will own everything. Robert won't be able to touch a penny. He won't even know you're a multimillionaire. How does that sound?" Talia nodded. The first step had been taken. When the lawyer left, the nurse brought her hot tea. Talia took it with both hands and smiled for the first time in weeks. "Do you know what the hardest part is?" she said, looking into the distance. "That all of this was already inside me. I just needed a reason to wake it up." The nurse didn't answer. She simply sat beside her in silence. And while the world continued to turn outside, inside room 305, a new woman was beginning to be born, made of scars, contained rage, and a promise she didn't intend to break. Never again would I be invisible. ## Part 3. The truth emerges. That phrase accompanied her during the following weeks like a mantra etched into her broken flesh. Every morning, while the hospital corridors sank into a ghostly silence, Talia repeated those words like a pagan prayer. She no longer asked God for anything. At this point, she didn't trust in saints or miracles, but she did believe in herself, even though her body still didn't respond, even though every step in rehabilitation was a torture. In the physical therapy room, her movements were minimal, millimeter by millimeter, but charged with an inner fury that not even the pain could extinguish. Every stretch was a contained scream. Every exercise was a battle. "You're making great progress," the physical therapist, a young woman with a Caribbean accent and a sweet gaze, told her one day. "There's something in your body fighting to come back to life, and it shows." "It's not the body," Talia replied without looking at her. "It's the soul." During these sessions, surrounded by other broken people, some with amputations, others with exposed fractures and empty gazes, she felt less alone, but also more awake. She watched, listened, and learned. One morning, while trying to lift her left leg a few more inches than usual, the physical therapist stepped out for a moment. The area's television was off. Only she and a couple of young men remained, talking quietly near the water dispenser. She was trying to concentrate until she heard a sentence that chilled her blood. "Do you remember the policy he took out just before the accident?" Her leg dropped suddenly. "Yeah. He said that if she became incapacitated, they'd pay him double." He was proud, like he'd closed a multimillion-dollar deal. Talia slowly turned her face. She couldn't see them clearly, but she recognized the voices. They were two of Robert's former employees. She had seen them at more than one party, at gatherings where she was in charge of the food while they talked about numbers, marketing, and expansion. Too much of a coincidence. "No, don't be paranoid. The guy's a psycho anyway, but I don't think. You don't know what he told me in the office. Sometimes strokes of luck come with a personal tragedy. You have to know how to take advantage of them." And that was 2 days before the accident. Talia's internal camera shut down. Her body tensed. Her lips turned white. She trembled. Rage took hold of her like an electric shock. She wanted to scream, to run, to hit something, but her body didn't respond, only her heart, which hammered like a drum about to burst. "Robert, it was you," she whispered, almost breathless. The physical therapist returned just then, without noticing her expression, and encouraged her to continue with the exercises. Talia obeyed automatically, her gaze lost. The rest of that day was a blank. She didn't remember eating or sleeping, or even speaking. Only the echo of that conversation, the dates, the coldness, the possibility that the man with whom she shared years had wanted to see her destroyed to collect an insurance policy. The idea ate away at her sanity. What if the accident wasn't an accident? What if the car that crossed so abruptly in front of hers that night wasn't a mistake? What if someone planned it? That night, she mentally reviewed everything that happened on the day of the crash. She was on her way home after her shift. Robert had called her earlier, demanding she hurry, that Brittany was coming for dinner with them. That word, dinner, no longer meant food. It meant humiliation. She mentally traced the route. She remembered the traffic light turning green, the black car cutting her off without lights, how she couldn't brake, how the other car disappeared. There was no clear police report. The driver never appeared. They just said he fled the scene. Blood rushed to her head. She wanted to scream, but what she did was cry. Not like before, not in silence. That night, she cried loudly, forcefully, with anger, like a broken child who finally understood that her monster wasn't under the bed. He had been sleeping next to her for years. The lawyer arrived the next day. She didn't even let him sit down. "I want you to investigate everything about the life insurance policy Robert took out in my name. Date, conditions, beneficiary, everything. Are you suspecting? I want facts, not assumptions. And if you find anything, I need proof. I need to know the extent of his betrayal." The lawyer looked at her for a long time, then nodded. "Leave it in my hands." 3 days later, he returned with documents in hand and a lowered gaze. The policy was signed by him a week before the accident. You are listed as the insured, and he is the direct beneficiary. There's a special clause that doubles the payment if you become permanently physically incapacitated. Talia didn't respond. She just looked at him. The lawyer continued. I paid to access the insurance's medical report. Robert submitted his paperwork to the insurance company 2 days after your accident. You were still in a coma. The silence was so thick that the room seemed to shrink. And the car, the other driver? No record. It was a crash without nearby cameras, all very clean. Talia closed her eyes, and in her mind the image of Robert saying, I wish you weren't alive, took on a new meaning. Perhaps he didn't say it as an insult. Perhaps he said it with disappointment. I want to know if he hired someone, an investigator, a former police officer, someone who could stage an accident. That will be more complicated, but I'll try. That night, for the first time since waking up, she asked to be alone. No nurses, no lawyers, no noise. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, naked, with the stitches still visible, the bruises already yellow, her legs thin and weak, the scars showing themselves as witnesses. And yet something in her shone. As if beneath that ruin, there was a precious metal waiting to emerge. She touched her belly. She remembered the times she dreamed of a child and how Robert, when she cried after seeing negative pregnancy tests, would say, Maybe it's for the best. You're not ready. You're not emotionally stable. Now she understood. It was never infertility, it was emotional sabotage. He didn't want a child with her. He wanted an excuse to keep her broken. The next morning, Robert appeared. He walked in casually. He was carrying plastic flowers. Look who's back to life. I thought you'd be up and walking by now. Talia said nothing, not a single gesture. She just looked at him. Robert left the flowers on the table and sat down. I need you to sign some papers. The bank needs your signature to close a joint account. It's just accounting stuff, the usual. She reached out her hand. Robert smiled, but instead of taking the pen, Talia looked him straight in the eyes. Did you collect the insurance yet? Robert froze. 1 second. 2. Then he laughed. What are you talking about? The policy. The one you took out a week before my accident. The one that paid you double if I became crippled. Did you collect it yet? Robert stood up. Who told you that? No one needs to tell me. You already said too much. You said it on the first day. I wish you weren't alive. Only now I understand why. Robert changed his tone. You're paranoid. You're weak. You're making things up. I'm awake, Robert. And you are finished. He looked at her with a mixture of rage and fear. He didn't answer, just picked up the papers and left the room. That same day, Talia authorized her lawyer to freeze any transaction Robert tried to make in her name. The trust was already active. Her name was hidden, her money protected. The nurse brought her hot tea and sat with her. You're different, Talia. Because I'm not afraid anymore. And what are you going to do? Talia looked out the window. Outside, the world kept turning as if nothing had happened. But inside her, a war was about to end. And she knew she didn't just want to survive. She wanted justice, and she wasn't going to stop until she got it. ## Part 4. The Other Life. The rehabilitation was no longer just physical. Every morning Talia woke up with the sun filtering through the hospital blinds. She felt something else settle inside her. The awareness, the clarity, the determination of a woman who no longer needed approval, or half-hearted love, or hypocritical smiles at dinner. The lawyer brought her periodic reports, accounts, suspicious movements, altered signatures. Robert moved like a fish in water among shady dealings, but he made a mistake. One he didn't expect Talia to notice because for years he had treated her like someone who didn't understand numbers, who got lost in contracts, who signed without reading. An obedient wife, a decorative figure. But now she was someone else. Reviewing the financial movements of the company she helped build from the ground up. Through a fake identity she used to communicate with her lawyer, she found a fixed monthly payment. It wasn't high, but it was constant. A transfer that had been going out for 3 years, on the 5th of every month, to an account with a female name, Maria Jones. That name sounded familiar to her, not as a face, but as an echo, a distant whisper she had heard perhaps in a phone call, on a bill, in some conversation that Robert cut short as soon as she entered the room. She asked for more information. Her lawyer tracked the account. It led to an address, a working-class neighborhood south of the city. It wasn't dangerous, but it was forgotten by the rest of the world. Talia didn't wait. Although she still used a cane and her leg hurt going downstairs, she requested a private car. She didn't use her real name. She pretended to be someone else. She didn't want to raise suspicion. The journey was long. Broken windows, old graffiti, hanging wires. The driver kept looking at her in the rearview mirror. He didn't seem to understand what a woman dressed in nice clothes, but with a cane, was doing going to that place. Upon arrival, she got out slowly. The facade was humble but clean. A rusty gate, a concrete yard with old toys scattered, and a dry potted plant next to the door. She knocked once. No one. Twice. From inside, hurried footsteps were heard, and then a child's voice. "Mom, someone's at the door." The sound of a lock turning was heard. The door opened slightly. A young woman, thin, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair carelessly tied up, appeared. She had a baby in one arm and a face dull with tiredness. "Yes." Talia took a deep breath. "I'm looking for Maria Jones." "Who's asking?" "Someone who needs answers." The woman tensed. The child in her arms started to fuss. "Who are you?" "Who am I?" "I am the legal wife of the man who has been lying to you." Maria's eyes widened. She took a step back. "Robert. Robert, but he told me you were dead." Talia gripped her cane. "How convenient." Behind Maria, a boy about 5 years old, barefoot in a stained t-shirt, appeared. "Mom, is Dad coming to play today?" Talia lowered her gaze, swallowed, and said nothing. Maria gently pushed him inside. "Go watch TV for a while, honey." The boy obeyed. Maria stepped out onto the porch. She closed the door. "What are you doing here?" "The question is, what are you doing receiving money from my company every month?" "A company that I helped build while you, what? Had children with my husband. I didn't know he was married. I swear. He told me he had an ex who died of cancer years ago." "And you didn't investigate, Maria?" "He always came late, he was always busy, he only stayed 2 or 3 nights a month, but he helped me. He paid the rent, the older one's school. He told me he loved me, that he was waiting for the right moment to make everything official." Talia let out a broken laugh. "Make what official?" "His second life." Maria lowered her head. She was on the verge of tears. "I'm not a bad person. I didn't say you were. And the children aren't to blame either." That sentence hurt her like a dull knife because it was true. The children were not to blame for the abandonment, the lie, or anything. "Since when?" 6 years. I met him at a business meeting. I was an assistant. He insisted, he pursued me, he took care of me, he made me feel important. He said he couldn't have children, but I got pregnant. He was surprised. Then he was happy, he promised everything." Talia looked at her. She saw in her the same naivete she once had. The same need to be chosen, the same blind faith. "And now he hasn't been here for months. He tells me he's traveling, that his mother is sick. Sometimes he doesn't answer messages, but the money keeps coming." "Of course it does. To maintain your silence and your hope." Maria cried. Talia approached and put a hand on her shoulder. Inside, she was broken, but outside she remained firm. "I'm not here to hurt you, but I need you to understand that this man is not who you think he is." "And you know him?" "No, not anymore. Maybe I never did." They stood in silence. They heard the children laughing inside. A cartoon was playing on the television. Life, in its most innocent form, continued without knowing it was wrapped in a lie. "What are you going to do?" Maria asked. Everything he never expected. ## Part 5, The Grand Reveal. That night, Talia returned to the hospital. Her lawyer was waiting for her. He handed her a new envelope with recent financial movements. Robert had withdrawn a significant amount of cash. They suspected he was planning to flee. Talia stopped him with a look. "We can track his flights, his movements. We have access to everything. He won't escape." She sat down. Her hands were shaking. "He has 2 children, you know? 2. With a woman living in a house that doesn't even have heating, and he's giving interviews as an example of a responsible businessman." The lawyer sighed. "And what will we do with that information?" Talia thought about it. Then she replied, "I don't know yet, but I won't keep it to myself." That night she wrote a letter, not to Robert but to herself. A letter where she forgave herself, for not seeing, for keeping silent, for believing. And then she tore it up. She didn't need any more words, only actions. Robert appeared at the hospital 3 days later in a new suit, smiling, as if nothing had happened. "Hello, my love. How are you today?" Talia looked at him. She was ready. "Did you come alone or with your second family?" Robert froze. "What are you talking about?" "Maria. Does that name ring a bell?" He didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. "What a terrible actor you are, Robert. The role of the grieving husband doesn't suit you anymore. You don't know what you're saying." "Well, I know everything. The children, the nocturnal visits, the money, your excuses." Robert approached, changing his tone. Talia, it wasn't planned. She stood up with the help of her cane, positioning herself in front of him. You were the one who wanted me to die or be left like this. You sold me for money, and now you talk to me about mistakes. You didn't make a mistake, you committed an emotional crime. Robert took a step back. He had never seen her like this. Standing firm, cold. You can't prove anything. Are you sure? He looked at her with clenched lips. What do you want? What I deserve. And you are going to pay for everything. With every lie, with every wound, with every night you left me alone thinking it was my fault. Robert left without saying more. For the first time, he didn't insult her. He didn't look down on her. He knew the game had changed. And Talia, alone in her room, smiled. Not out of vengeance, but out of liberation, because she no longer carried the weight of doubt, because now she knew everything and was ready to act. ## Part 6, The Collapse. The nights were different. Now they were no longer storms of insomnia and fear. They were planned, cold, and meticulously calculated. Talia slept little, but every time she closed her eyes, her mind wove an invisible net. In silence, from the shadows, with a calm that was not natural but acquired through sheer pain, she asked to be discharged from the hospital. She rented a discreet apartment in the city. She became a ghost moving through private clinics and investment offices under a name that wasn't hers, but was. Valerie Summers. She hired a physical therapist who had worked with elite athletes. How long do I have to pretend weakness? She asked him while he helped her stand for the first time without a cane. As long as necessary, he replied. But don't forget you're doing it for yourself, not for them. I'm doing it for the truth, and because I want back what was stolen from me. At the same time, she began psychological treatment. Her therapist gave her silence, space, and the exact questions. Why don't you report them? Because what's legal is not always just, and what's just is not always legal. Her personal lawyer, the only one who knew the entirety of the plan, brought her a special report. Robert had put part of his company up for sale to attract new international investors. He was urgently in need of money. This is where we come in, the lawyer said. Anonymous, silent, through shell companies we will buy up shares. By the time he realizes, it will be too late. Talia signed the documents with a smile. Her handwriting was firm, clear. Neither her hand nor her soul trembled anymore. Over the next few months, her investment grew like a vine. When Robert signed the final capital increase contract, he had no idea that his majority shareholder was the woman he tried to destroy. Power did not come with shouting or vengeance. It came with coldness, intelligence, and patience. Robert, for his part, showed no signs of suspicion. He appeared in the media, gave interviews, and talked about resilience and overcoming challenges, while his world unknowingly slowly crumbled. In one of those interviews, he said, "My company is my legacy, and everything I have achieved through effort. I owe nothing to anyone." Talia turned off the television. The lie no longer hurt her, it made her pity him. One morning, she walked without a cane for the first time to the kitchen. Her physical therapist, who was watching a few steps away, remained silent. She didn't smile, just exhaled, like someone finishing an internal battle that almost consumed her. The event was his moment, but not his, it was hers. Everything was ready, everything but one thing. The final piece, the most delicate. Robert still didn't know that he no longer had control over his own company. The theater was packed. Warm lights, giant screens, cameras broadcasting live for the most important business media in the country. Robert took the stage confidently. He wore a custom-made suit, polished shoes, and that air of superiority that never left him. Thank you all for being here. Tonight, we are not just celebrating an expansion. We are celebrating a victory of life, he said firmly. At that moment, the screen lights flickered. The technician took a deep breath, and from the back of the hall, firm, slow steps were heard, *** without a cane in heels. ***, everyone turned. The murmur began like a dull current. Talia appeared from the shadows in a black dress, elegant, sober, impeccable. Her hair was pulled back, her lips red, her gaze fixed on the stage. She walked straight, without assistance, without pain, without fear. Robert instantly paled. He took a small step backward. Eleanor gasped a whisper full of disbelief. Brittany looked at Robert with confusion. Talia didn't stop. She walked down the central aisle like someone returning to reclaim what belongs to them. She walked up to the stage without asking permission. The music stopped. The atmosphere became tense. Talia positioned herself in the center. She took the microphone that Robert still firmly held. Without trembling. "Good evening." The echo of her voice filled the theater. No one breathed. My name is Talia Delgado, nurse survivor, and in case anyone forgot, the legal wife of Mr. Robert Montgomery. A deadly silence. Robert tried to react. Talia, what are you doing here? Reclaiming what belongs to me and showing everyone who you really are. She turned to the audience. For years, this man sold himself as an example of overcoming entrepreneurship and humanity. But what you didn't know is that he built it all on lies, abandonment, and the attempt to destroy me. At the back, the screen lit up. The video began. The first scene, a leaked conversation between Robert and his insurance lawyer. Asterisk, if she becomes incapacitated, how much do I get paid? Asterisk, asterisk, double, but it must be irreversible. Asterisk, asterisk, then we're good. Asterisk. The murmurs grew. Eleanor covered her mouth. Brittany held her hand to her chest. Another fragment followed. Monthly transfers to Maria Jones with dates, amounts, and the label asterisk, secondary expenses. Asterisk, Robert's voice in an internal meeting. Asterisk, the important thing is that she doesn't find out anything. The other one has his kids, his house. What I give her is enough. Tell her not to interfere. Asterisk. Robert yelled. Turn it off. Turn that off. Talia raised her hand. Nobody move. The technician obeyed. The video stopped. The tension was unbearable. Robert was sweating. Brittany had already left the stage. Eleanor was trembling in her seat. Several journalists raised their cameras. Talia turned back to him. You left me to die. I chose to live. Robert began to breathe with difficulty. He staggered. His face lost color. The audience began to get up from their seats. The chaos grew. Robert's body fell to his knees. He tried to hold onto the podium, but failed. His legs stopped responding. His arms hung lifelessly. The right side of his face tensed. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Talia didn't move, she just looked at him. Not with hatred. With certainty. And even so, I never would have done what you did to me. The paramedics arrived and put him on a stretcher. Robert couldn't speak, only making a guttural sound. The diagnosis was immediate. Stroke, partial paralysis, possible speech damage. The ambulance took him away while the audience murmured and recorded everything with their phones. Eleanor walked past her, looked her in the eyes, and whispered, All of this is your fault. Talia didn't respond. Brittany, from the other side, shot her a look of contempt disguised as fear. You're sick. Talia smiled. I healed. He was the sick one. The event ended without applause, without launches, without speeches. Talia walked off the stage. She left alone, walking to the exit without saying a word. The cameras didn't dare follow her. As she got into the car, her lawyer handed her a folder. Now you are officially the sole owner of everything. She put it away without opening it. I don't need anyone to know, just me. And now Talia looked out the window. In the distance, the city was still alive. The traffic, the lights, the noise. Everything the same. Now I rest. ## Part 7 Freedom. That early morning, the silence in her apartment became a gift. It no longer hurt, no longer suffocated her, no longer felt like punishment. It was pure freedom, as if all the weight she once carried on her body, in her soul, and on her name had evaporated on that stage where the lie collapsed and the truth rose without shouting. She got up early, made coffee, walked barefoot on the cold floor, and stopped in front of the window to watch the city slowly light up. The news was quickly filling the headlines. Businessman suffers collapse at event, financial scandal, leaked compromising audio, infidelity, tax evasion, abuse of power allegations. Everything Robert Montgomery once hid behind his polished smile came to light like a plague. Brittany disappeared from public life. Eleanor gave an interview where she tried to victimize herself, but no one believed her. And Robert was in intensive care, immobile, frustrated, defeated. Talia spoke to no one. She watched from afar as the world that had humiliated her so much crumbled. Not out of revenge, but out of life's law. What is false always ends up falling. What is built on ruins ends up swallowing you. That week, her lawyer sent her a short message. He asked to see you. She didn't reply immediately. She thought about it for 3 days. She arrived alone at the hospital where Robert was. The same kind of corridors that had seen her break down months before. Only now she walked erect, without a cane, without help. She entered the room without announcing herself. Robert was in a wheelchair facing the window with an open book he clearly couldn't read. His face was dropped on one side, his mouth twisted, his gaze dull. It took him a few seconds to notice she was there. When he saw her, his eyes welled up. He tried to speak, but only a choked, incomplete sound came out. She didn't approach immediately, she observed him from the doorway. It hurt her. Not for him, but for all that he represented, for what she once believed was love for the lost time. Robert moved his head with effort. He barely managed to stammer. "You came to mock me?" Talia approached slowly, sat in the chair across from him, and looked him in the eyes without resentment, without pity. "No. I came to tell you that it doesn't hurt anymore." Robert looked at her for a long time. A tear fell. He tried to say something else, but his mouth no longer responded. Talia took a sealed envelope from her purse and placed it on the table. "It's the divorce papers. You can sign them when you're ready. Or not. It doesn't matter. I'm already free." He tried to reach for the envelope. He couldn't. His arm hung like a torn cloth. Talia stood up, took a step toward the door, but stopped. She looked back, and for a second she felt compassion. Not for the man, but for the human being reduced to a shadow. "I didn't hate you, Robert. That's what bothered you most, wasn't it? That even when you hurt me, I still hoped you would be better. But love isn't eternal. Mine is gone." Robert tried to call out to her, but she was no longer listening. She closed the door behind her, and as she stepped into the corridor, she let out a slow, deep sigh, like someone leaving an old house that was once a home but now only holds cobwebs. A week later, she packed what was necessary. Comfortable clothes, a notebook, a train ticket. She didn't tell anyone. She disconnected her number, closed her old bank accounts, and sold the company that now fully belonged to her. The money was distributed into anonymous, untouchable funds. She changed her name. She changed her life. The train station was empty. It was early, the sky was cloudy. The sound of the carriages mixed with the distant singing of a street vendor. Talia boarded with a backpack on her shoulder, her hair shorter, without makeup, light, as if she had finally released all the chains. She sat by the window, resting her head on the glass. The train began to move, and it was right then, at that precise moment, that she understood that freedom wasn't a place. It was a decision. Next to her, a child no older than 7 was playing with a rag doll. He looked at her curiously. "Where are you going?" Talia smiled. "Somewhere I've never been. To live." The child smiled back. He returned to his game. Talia closed her eyes. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't think about the past or Robert or Eleanor or the pain. She only thought about what was to come, about what she could do, about everything she now deserved. The end. What did you think of this story? There are many people who, like Talia, are fighting silent battles every day. Our hope is that her voice also resonated within you. If this story touched your heart, share it. Let more people feel supported. Be part of the change. Tell us in the comments what you would have done in her place. What city are you watching us from? Reading your comments makes us feel closer to you. And if you haven't already, subscribe, and hit the bell. Every gesture from you is a sign that these stories must continue to be told. Don't go yet. Our next compelling story is already appearing on your screen. Click on any of them, and continue exploring this universe of moving and necessary real-life tales. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling with us. We send you a huge hug wherever you are. See you in the next one.